Interlinked with our Neo Tokyo project manager hosting here, Firestorm, and myself, Zehi from Neo Tokyo News. Today we have some very special speakers. First off, we have Johnny Hustlepedia from This Thing of Ours, also well known from his role on Crypto Banter. And we have Jorge from Arcade to Earn. And we have one of the most prolific builders in Web3, crypto gaming, the co-founder of Neo Tokyo, founder of Gigamart and Imposters, Ellio in the house. Welcome, everyone.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jorge, I don't think you've been on official NT Twitter space prior. I know
Twitter spaces be rugged sometimes.
Yeah, Hustlepedia has a couple times, but do you want to give a little intro and background on yourself just for the audience?
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you for having me on. I think we've been on the spaces in other different spaces here and there, but I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Arcade to Earn. And I'm also the Chief Marketing Officer for Non-Fungible Arcade. I have dual roles. Quick info, I've been in the banking industry, commercial real estate and investment banking for the past about 16, 17 years before I got into Web3. Worked at a hedge fund, top 40 hedge fund, and then came over and got into, crypto gaming, really, I guess is the correct word. And, now we're trying to get away from that language into gaming itself. Arcade is a GameFi infrastructure platform for the blockchain space, basically allowing metagamers and gamers coming to a platform where they're able to really kind of take advantage of either they suck at gaming or they have too many NFTs in this specific game. We allow those to come to a platform and really take advantage of other assets or have other users use those assets. So it's the best way to put it is the index fund for GameFi. And with Non-Fungible Arcade, I think everybody knows, is pretty well aware of the most recent mint that we just had where we are giving away $500,000. And that's a little bit about me.
Sweet. It looks like everybody's back on stage, so that's good to see. We didn't get completely rugged. Today, I'll give the brief agenda. I think Neo Tokyo is focused on Web3 gaming, and a lot of us are as well on this call. So I think it's the right audience to kind of dive deep into that topic, talk about gaming content in general for traditional games and Web3, where we see the content strategies going, talk about what tactics and negative tactics Web3 games have been using over the past years, and then talk about what's preventing widestream adoption from those traditional game development companies and why we've seen some companies start to adopt blockchain tech in their games. So focus on gaming today for sure. And I think Zehi has some news and current events to kick off the convo.
Sure, yeah, and we would definitely want to make sure that audience members feel free to raise your hand and jump in, take part in the conversation. We want to hear some other voices for sure. Just around the news, starting the year, it's a bit of a slow news cycle, but of course, there's always something going on. Even in the midst of the bear market, there's more and more adoption. We even see the common enemy of Web3, China, starting their own kind of national NFT market, which is a pretty interesting development, even though they're not calling them NFTs and they're using their own blockchain, but that's an interesting one going on. We see BMW also doubling down and doing a little bit more Web3 integration to their whole ecosystem. They're starting some program in Thailand, and it looks like they're going to be expanding out from there. And probably the biggest news relevant to this event was Square Enix. Their president came out with a statement talking about wanting to get more deep into crypto gaming, Web3 gaming, especially they said crypto entertainment is how they phrased it. Everybody knows them from their Final Fantasy work. So that is definitely bullish news for the crypto gaming industry. And I think that provides us with a good jumping off point.
Yeah, I think we've seen a few headlines of big game publishers publicly talking about blockchain tech, but it's been kind of a slow adoption, slow news cycle there. Square Enix, Japanese game developer, as Zehi mentioned, well known for their Final Fantasy series. I think it's interesting to think about the international gaming markets versus the US gaming market. I think international gaming markets tend to have bigger audiences playing mobile games, but Square Enix, international game dev. What's everyone's opinion on that news?
I'll start on this one quickly. I think that the IP behind Final Fantasy is definitely strong, and I think in the past they've done some pretty major IP collaborations in some of their past games as well. So some of their collectible value could definitely be there, and it's just good to see high level studios crossing over. It's the same thing with the brands as mentioned beforehand with like the BMWs. We're seeing a bunch of brands moving over to NFT technology the same way that we're good to see a bunch of gaming studios moving over to NFT technology inside of their video games. And I think that Square Enix buying in is one of those Ubisoft type of examples. But I think that they're going to have a better success as long as they have a better rollout plan, right? Because I think that these brands, Web3 makes so much sense inside of their games, inside of their products, if you just integrate it correctly. But it's all about the rollout plan. There's no reason that Ubisoft should fail whenever it comes to NFTs inside of their games. They just didn't know how to market that correctly. So I think whenever we get around to it, as long as Square Enix has a game plan, it'll be great for the industry, as long as we don't get one of those Bloomberg style headlines that another big studio has some sort of failure or something like that, right? Because that's the worst. Whenever something goes wrong and we check the headlines and they're flooding our industry, we want to see the success cases out of it. So I hope Square Enix has a good rollout plan, is able to do it right.
No, Square Enix is really exciting. And just in general, NFT gaming is going to be exciting. I had this conversation a little earlier, which was effectively there's a very large majority, and I was talking about this with Gabe Layden over at Limit Break, and there's the majority of free-to-play gamers don't spend a dime. And so with the advent of free-to-play gaming, effectively there was like a quality of life difference. It used to be if you had the cartridge or if you had the disc, you were playing the same game as everyone else. Now there's a wealth gap, right, of fun and experience that comes with free-to-play gaming. And there's a small minority that spends the most amount of money. And so the monetization of the industry is actually driven by a tiny minority. And what you see is kind of like a vocal minority, but it might even be a vocal majority. But the fact is that vocal majority continues to spend their time in places where these monetization drivers are there. So it's just funny where like we're in an interesting moment where there's a stigma against the thing that's actually really good for the progress of the industry. Now there's fair complaints like hyper financialization of everything inside a video game might lead to fun being drained from parts of it. I get that. But we also know that a lot of game developers, just like we've seen with the free to play model, a lot of game developers focus on making sure that the monetization doesn't ruin the experience for your average player. And you've seen that across the absolute biggest entities in the space, Fortnite, League of Legends, all those cosmetic only upgrades. That's kind of the meta because, yeah, sure, you don't have as cool of a skin maybe, but you still have a decent skin and you're enjoying the same game. So we know that the most popular experiences will be ones that have balance. And so I think it's an overblown fear to think that NFTs will actually be a negative in any way for gamers. But we live in this just amazing sort of, precursor intro to this new era. Now, the gamers have been trained that every new monetization format for game studios is actually designed to be very predatory against the players. So the player base is ready and they're sensitive to anything new to be in outrage. That's just sort of the nature of gamers, is to be outraged and then to like slowly just accept it. And then all of a sudden to, hyper focus and become obsessed with it. So we saw that with microtransactions. That definitely like broke the trust between developers and players. And now NFTs are coming in, and the funny thing is the big publishers don't even like NFTs because they're so player friendly. They're so friendly and valuable to the player versus the developer, right? And so you have this hilarious sort of juxtaposition of expectations and reality, where the actual NFT is the best thing for the players, but they're so conditioned to being screwed by the developers that they don't even want it. When Ubisoft came out with their Quartz, I believe was their release, and they withdrew it. It was just hilarious, right? So one of the things that has been my thesis forever is that this will happen through indie and sort of AA sort of level developers, and that eventually once the model becomes ubiquitous and there's some hits in the genres, then the bigger studios will be forced to do it. But they know that it's it's tricky, right? We've seen right now the royalty debate. Well, do you think like Square Enix and these studios are just going to accept that Blur or some other marketplace or X2 are just going to go ahead and let players screw them out of royalties? Like, how does that impact the business model for these game studios? And remember, they have a switch they can flip to just say, you know what, we don't actually want to do this, right? So people want to play our games. The NFT thing is not currently required. So we have a little bit of an interesting dilemma going on right now, where you need to understand that the actual studios are resistant to it, but the players are the ones who shouldn't be resistant to it. So the dynamic is actually kind of flipped on its head right now, but that won't last forever. So my point is that we're all very early, and understanding that early comes with confusing data, right? Like you don't always get the accurate data before people recognize trends for what they are. And right now we're seeing sentiment data that is mostly fueled by like headlines and tabloids. It's not fueled by anyone who's playing a fun game and collecting NFTs just as they grind through the game. No one is doing that and saying, God, I hate NFTs. They're reading some, short tabloid. They're seeing some kind of like harsh review clickbait thing by some streamer that they just did because NFTs was trending and they knew they could grab headlines and do an outrage video. Like it's all bad incentives aligned with formulating this sentiment, right? And so what we'll see over the next several years is the actual people experiencing what we're talking about here, and we'll see that stigma start to crumble. And so to me, the stigma is one of the most interesting parts about it. And I'm excited just to be here so early to have people consider me a sort of early arrival and thought leader in the gaming space. I was definitely earlier to it than many, and I believe that just being here and sort of ignoring right now, like everyone looks around and they go, "Oh, Metaverse is dead. Don't talk about crypto gaming." Blah 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 blah. And I just find it funny because fast forward several years and we know what the world is going to look like in 2030. There's going to be a whole lot more emphasis on gaming, interactive entertainment, and the value drivers throughout those ecosystems will evolve. And so, if you think of where the world is going, and no one can convince me that it's not going in that direction, the sentiment right now is probably one of the biggest advantages that we'll all get in this really weird and changing economy. And so, the people who get it, it's like, if you know type thing. And people are so polarized on the topic that just explaining it to them and kind of shilling them on it or pilling them on it isn't really going to work, right? It's up to the communities to build, which is why I think Neo Tokyo is such an important experiment, is the getting people ideologically aligned at adding value and or building this metaverse gaming industry, which I believe will be so dominant. And so that's one of the things that I'm so excited about. Again, I rambled quite a bit there, but the main points is that we live in a very interesting sort of tale of two cities where things are absolutely not the way they should be. And that's a huge advantage for us.
I think you hit the nail on the head there as far as the user versus developer sentiment goes. When you think about when microtransactions were introduced, it was back in the 2007, maybe 2008, when DLC started becoming a thing. And slowly from there, developers started increasing their microtransaction strategies. And that was a long time ago. The past couple decades or 15 years, players have been pushing back against strategies that have affected the user experience for the sake of those monetization streams. I think people that are around our ages, like late 20s to mid 30s, we saw that transition happen, and we are the ones that were pushing against that. But the younger generations have grown up with that completely from the beginning of their gaming hobby lives. And so you talked about like how that was something the players pushed back against because it was detrimental to their playing experience. And they're doing the same thing for something that's going to be beneficial to their experience of owning digital assets. And so I feel like it's going to be a quicker transition period, and there's going to be less pushback once the sentiment changes and once the branding around those digital assets can change.
It's always curious how that's really going to happen too, in terms of just like, is it going to be the product, having a product that's just so good that the adoption starts to happen, or is it going to be like if people are tricked into it? As this thing is described, I don't know, it reminds me of some political things, even just like, certain political parties that get people who are not wealthy to support them, and then they go and promote policies that make the wealth gap even more much bigger and broader. So it's similar like that in the gaming, where somehow the gamers fight against these technologies that would actually help them to gain more from their time and energy.
Yeah, and I think it's back to when you play Call of Duty or any of these games, you're not saying, hey, let me go check the token price, or let me go check how the market looks before I play the game. And so again, it goes back to the evolution of how this evolved in GameFi, from coming to Axie Infinity to where we are now. People are finally realizing the real utility behind how blockchain really works, especially in gaming. And so now that we're in a bear market, even across in other industries, R&D is going to be kind of something that's really a bigger focus on how to push into the next, or how to push your products. And I think this is the part where a lot of people now are researching exactly what is it that we do, and not reading all the time the tabloids that say, the stigma of crypto being a scam, and, even crypto gaming being a scam and everything, and really trying to figure out what is the technology behind what we're building. So it's like Elio says, it's very exciting to see that we know where we'll be in 2030, especially at least in this industry, because we know exactly what we're building.
And I think it's going to be maybe a mixture, right? Those first games, we need a product out of Web3. I completely have conviction on this fact that we need a product out of Web3 to be disruptive enough to bring the bigger and broader studios into the industry and make this really mainstream to the highest of levels. Like, we have to have a first-person shooter or something like that, or just a fun game that comes and sweeps the space, sweeps Twitch off of his feet, those type of things. But we could see a mixture of just, first of all, you don't have to make it so complicated to onboard users. Just make it a normal game with the layers on top of it with the Web3 technology, right? Just give players the power to trade their assets that they do earn or that they do even pay for, right? I think that's the bottom line. And we've seen Polygon do a great job of Trojan horsing people in with Reddit. So whether there's a Trojan horse way of getting them in, or if we just get and wrap people's minds around the fact that there's nothing wrong with Web3 technology and that technology stack layered on top of a game that you love whenever it comes to the skins and the assets that you are owning. And CSGO is the prime example of that for years and years. At least they have not shut down that power for their players, right? And I think that makes their ecosystem even more flavorful and fruitful for the players to be able to participate in.
Yeah, Zehi, you mentioned will we have to trick players into using blockchain tech and gaming? I think it's more of a transition for the game developers themselves, and some of the pushback or reluctance to use the tech is it's so new. There aren't that many devs out there with that experience. Volatility of the assets or the tokens themselves, I think, could be a big negative that they see versus the fully controlled token, virtual off-chain tokens that they've been using for the last couple decades. They have full control over that economy and can print whatever they want or take tokens out of the market. But I'm curious, from an actual game dev's perspective and someone who's worked in both traditional games and now is working in Web3 gaming. Elliot, for you, what have been those challenges as a developer using the technology or using tokens in the game's economy that you've run into as a developer? And where do you think other game publishers are, the challenges that they're facing right now and the conversations that they're having around this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what's very over dramatized in this industry is the tech that's required to put crypto into games. I think everyone's like, the infrastructure. Not really, right? Not really. There is really cool infrastructure. We're building cool stuff. But the big hang up has been the game itself, right? The games are by far the hardest part. And everybody goes, well, Web3 games are garbage. And it's, Gabe Layden said this, in the normal mainstream gaming industry, we get something like 6,000 to 8,000. I think 6,000 was the number he used, new games a year. And of those, people have heard of 10 or 5, right? And so to get the 5 that are absolutely sick and people want to come back to, there's more of a law of big numbers. That's a reality. So, the missing piece here is the game, right? Games take a long time to develop. They're expensive as heck to develop. And the people who can develop them and already have that skill set to develop them at a high quality and build audiences around them don't need necessarily to step into the gray area of the world of crypto, which we all know comes with regulatory uncertainty, technology uncertainty, new models, and hard to predict sort of market dynamics. Those things are all, if you're a business owner, stressful, right? As much as having more, opportunistic ways to build in a community-centric way, that's also exciting. But what you're sort of failing to see, and I think people just don't quite appreciate, is that it's just always been the same issue, which is that the good game will work with crypto, without crypto. It'll work online, offline. Like the good game is the good game. And that's what will attract players. Gamers are driven by fun. So it's really simple, right? Once the game's fun, none of the other stuff is really a big blocker, because, for example, having, the way that we're building imposters, we want our assets on ETH because we think that lends itself to having the highest sort of base layer asset value accrual mechanism. At least we want our sort of Genesis assets on ETH. When we do like resources and stuff in the future, those will most likely not be on ETH mainnet because you're just high volume of transactions. However, for like the Genesis, and I'll bring him up again just because he's another known developer who's had success in the mainstream development world, which is Limit Break and Gabe. They're putting their Daigaku assets on mainnet as well, but they're not going to run everything off of mainnet, right? You can have a middleware that you connect your wallets to and tracks all the stuff in the game, and then when there are like big airdrops or big rewards or whatever, there can be sort of batch transactions or specific transactions that are given to those wallets or accrue to those wallets. There's so many ways to do this without having like a transaction for every single thing. And I think the concept that like, gosh, these big developers are really stuck on how to add ERC20s to their game, or how to reward players with NFTs. There's absolutely no confusion as to like how to do that. You could do it with, Polygon, other fast chains. You could do it through middlewares. You could do it through centralized servers that only get minted once the player chooses to pay a gas fee. Like there's a million ways you could work around it, and that's not the issue. The issue is that for the studios that are choosing to invest tens of millions of dollars into building a commercial grade game, the amount of those studios that have been sort of native to the space is limited, right? And it's new. And really, if you take a look at it and you're being honest, it wasn't even a popular narrative until Axie Infinity went on its run, which started roughly in June, July of last year, right? So June, July of 2020, the year before. So June, July of 2021 is when the narrative kind of began, right? And the first way to approach the narrative that everyone decided to shoot at was just to say, how can we take a casual mobile game and dress it up with Web3 economics so that people can effectively have sort of like a new form of DeFi? Like you hold this, you get that, and that yields you this, and there's a market for that. Like it was just a very basic like DeFi thing, but there was no concept of renewable demand. The only way you get renewable demand and sustainable demand is through a game that's actually fun and innovative. Goes back to the original problem. Games that are fun and innovative take a long time to build. And someone who's been 6 years, 5 years in building, they're not necessarily jumping to add new experimental tech to their project before they just at least see if gamers like it, especially with all of the negative sort of sentiment drifting around among games. So is the tech an issue? Is there a big hiccup with the tech? In my view, the tech around getting like ERC20s and ERC 721s into the actual games is not at all even like, I would put that as far as like 100% of the challenge. That's probably 2% of the challenge, or 3% of the challenge. The biggest percent of the challenge, the 94% of the challenge, is the game being fun and being something that people want to play. And if you solve that, then you can choose to have incentives and an economic layer that looks like anything you want.
Good stuff. Yeah, I definitely want to reiterate here that anybody's got any questions for any of these speakers or want to make a point, definitely just raise your hand and jump up here. We also have, you can just make a comment, bottom right there. I do see Bad Future from Neo Tokyo News has asked, how long until crypto gaming is just referred to as gaming? I don't know if Hustlepedia, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, how long until crypto gaming is referred to as just gaming? I think we can't rush we can't push the agenda too hard. We can't overshoot that narrative. I think between somewhere between 2025 and what Elliot said 2030. I think between that horizon, we're going to see a completely different landscape in gaming.
There's no doubt that I think the language is another aspect of right now. Those that have been here since the early times realize that the language needs to change. And it needs to change even with us, even like in a space like this where it says the big plays in crypto gaming, right? Well, the minute we change as well the language to the big plays in gaming, we will be part of the pioneers to help bring that understanding of the language that this is just gaming. But it's like I can't tell you how many times I say crypto gaming. I think I even said it earlier, and GameFi and all this stuff. It's not natural for us yet, but we're getting there. But it's definitely a process and several years away from being there.
Just brought Eli up on board here. Rat King himself.
What's going on? I'm driving, so I'm going to make this quick, but I want to agree with that. It's the same thing with music, right? We used to call, when we first became transitioning into MP3s, everybody was mentioning music as MP3s, right? We had MP3 players, we had we had cassettes, right? You'd call them cassette players. Eventually, things transitioned and everything became ubiquitous, and now it's just called music, right? So in gaming, I think is going to be the same way. And it's like George said, it's even if we're still sitting here in a space and calling it crypto gaming, we're already segmenting ourselves away from traditional gaming. Even if I don't really see it that much. But like, even if traditional gaming communities were having Twitter spaces and they saw the word crypto gaming, they'd automatically get turned off and run away. So I agree. I think it's tough because we are a niche right now and we are trying to stick together, work together. And so that's why we still use terms like NFT gaming, Web3 gaming, crypto gaming. But I agree. I think we need to transition, at least publicly, right? In our Discords and whatever, sure. I think we can still use those terms, but I agree. I think it starts with us. And, Elliot's right. At the end of the day, it's about a game being fun. Now, I will say, I think there's issues with integration and seamlessness, because when you look at V-Bucks or Overwatch coins, right? Any of these currencies, there's no friction. You're automatically, and I think part of that is because you're running through a system like PlayStation Store or Steam, right? So they're already, your account's already loaded. You don't have to go through wallets. You don't have to sign in and stuff like that. So I think it's a little tough right now with that concept of making it seamless to where you're not having to worry about all that friction between blockchains and wallets. But I think that, that'll be solved. That's not something I'm too worried about. But I think part of it is just, I think Johnny's said it a lot. George said it. Just has to stop segmenting ourselves and just make shit fun, right? Like, if a game's really, really fun, if it's viral, if you get like proximity chat in Call of Duty, like even a small thing like that even Warzone 2 sucks ass, but that shit was so fun because of proximity chat. And so I think once we have, and Elliot said it too, these games take time, right? Like, maybe some of them don't. Maybe there's some indie games that pop off really well that didn't take that long. But for the majority, and this is the struggle with what people had issues with in the beginning of NFTs and crypto gaming, everybody was throwing their money at all these projects promising a game in under a year, right? Where that's just not going to happen. So I think when these games start coming out, when traditional developers like move over into this market and we get a lot more skill in this niche, I think then we start seeing what we want to see.
You're making you're convicting me
ahead,
here, Eli, because I wrote that title. Now I'm regretting I didn't just say gaming. I'll blame it on ChatGPT. They wrote the title, not me. Just kidding.
Oh, is that what happened? No. All right, yeah. Throw the blame on ChatGPT. No, but look, it's like I said before. We are trying to draw each other in, right? We're still niche. We still want everybody in the community to get into these conversations. So I do get it, right? It's hard not to do that. But I think that there has to be some intentionality behind these conversations, or like what our public display is. if the goal of this discourse is not to like be something really mainstream and widespreading, then it's okay to do that. Because we're a community trying to reach other people within crypto gaming and other people to grow this and to figure out solutions to problems and to learn. But when it comes to, I think, public initiatives, I think all these fucking terms have to go out the window. And same, we look at Reddit, right? I think we all have had this conversation before about the whole digital collectible thing. I don't know if that's the solution regardless. But it did really well. And I don't think that's what made people accept it. I think it's because a lot of Reddit users just got it for free. And that's what onboarded them, not calling them digital collectibles. But yeah, I think it's all about intentionality. If you're trying to do something that's to grow us into the world, then you got to get rid of all these terms that have such negative connotations attached to it. If you're trying to spread into the niche even more, then I think it's fine.
Look at crypto right now, right? Look at like what's the meme coin right now? Bonk, BONK, right? And the shit that's happened with FTX. Like, as long as we keep having like these meme coins and all this shit happening, it's really going to be tough for us on the gaming side as well to separate ourselves from it, because of all the, again, like Bonk's getting so much attention. Everybody's like to the moon, Dodge, like, the Doge of Solana. It's hard. It's hard to kind of separate ourselves from stuff like that when, I'm pretty sure probably 80% of us in here are probably like degenning in some sort because you got a free airdrop from it. So yeah, it's a separation part too,
Yeah, and I just because you were talking about Bonk, not that this is focused on that, but I think the other issue too is air quote tokenomics ruin this shit completely. If you think about V-Bucks or Overwatch coins or whatever game, they're pegged to the dollar. Like, they're pegged to a specific amount that you're buying from the developer. They're not. There's no vested. They're not getting dumped. There's no issue regarding actual monetary incentives and prices. And I think because we're making it attached to the blockchain, right, tradable, and speculative value can make a difference. As long as that's a factor, I think it's always going to have a struggle in trying to break free of that stigma. So I just another thought with tokenomics.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, there's been values associated with plenty of in-game items across many titles over the last decade, and that doesn't impact most players' experience. And some players do focus on that, and some players make careers out of selling in-game items and that sort of thing. So I don't necessarily think that's as big of a leap as you're saying. But I did want to transition the conversation a little bit. Elliot earlier mentioned at the core of what makes a game popular is a fun gameplay experience. And I think on top of that, what makes those fun game experiences popular is the content that's created from them. Over the last 5 years, that content has shifted around as far as like which platforms are pushing that content the most and are the most popular. It moved from gaming YouTube to live streaming on Twitch, and now to shorter form content through TikTok, and now YouTube Shorts has been pushing that hard the last couple of years. I want to get all of your perspectives on just gaming content in general and where you've seen the trend recently and where you think that trend might move in the next couple of years as the shorter form content and the live streams have been kind of taking over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think quickly to add is, again, we went from content creators from the Axie Infinity, where it was like, the funny clickbait stuff that, you're going to make 100x and all this stuff, to now what we're talking about, right, with Elliot, like talking about the fun games, like what's actual fun. And so, I think it's the transition from that type of content to this content, and it's going to be it's also a change of audience that you're doing, right? Because there was the metagame that where everybody was playing in this space to actual real gamers. So that transition is very interesting, and I'll let kind of Hustle add to it because he's the real one on what he's doing in every day, and so is Elio. So I'll let them answer it.
I just think content creation right now, like so many people who are the biggest people in the headlines and really just in the world now are that way because of social media, right? And that's because of content creation. And within gaming, it's even more so with how popular Twitch is and gaming YouTube is. As mentioned, I don't see any of it particularly going away. I think there's going to be plenty of room for the short form content creators. I think the YouTube, the informational, the how-to videos, the walkthrough guides, the introductions to games, like level by level, the I would say the nightly streamers like Bryson, for example, grinding games. There's going to be eventually esports grinders in these content creation ecosystems. I completely see there being from every facet and every angle, the same, every side attack from content creation perspective and Web3 gaming, so to speak, than there is in normal gaming. And I don't see any form of content really going away for the foreseeable future. The rise of short form content is definitely like meteoric, but there is always going to be people searching up on YouTube, how to get advice or looking for a little bit of educational content to, do their own research. So I see there really is just an angle for all of it. But I think content creation is just so powerful, and as an industry, as powerful as Web3 gaming, it's good to have quality content creators, like Elio, like I would say Bryson, like Kagi, like Crypto Stash. There's a lot of quality guys out there. So, excited for the industry going forward, and content creation is a big part of it.
We have Fav up on the stage now of Citizen Wiki and the business AMAs going on in the Citadel. Welcome, bro. Good to see you up here. What you got for us?
Yeah, I was wondering if I go back to the conversation about investing and tokens, because I'm a true believer. I'm a member of all four of these communities. So I love the idea. I love the concept. I love the space. But I want to be a passive investor because, I've got a career. I've got all this other stuff. I can't actively be involved in building in crypto gaming. So how do I determine, is there a rule of thumb from the panel for understanding how to be a passive investor in this and not just buying Pokemon cards? I'm actually investing into the industry.
I'll just speak shortly on this, but I'm the proponent of bet on people and not promises. I love betting on projects with, and especially in the bear market, right, with people behind them. Let's just say like Neo Tokyo, like Steady Stack, like NF Arcade, like Imposters. There's so many different projects out there with quality builders behind them. So I love that because I know for a fact that they're doing everything to make their project everything it can be first and foremost. And then if it's like, that's from an NFT perspective more so, right? From a crypto perspective, right? You just have to have a strategy, and it's never financial advice, but always just have a strategy. In these times, only stick to top tier conviction, and always keep dry powder on the sidelines.
Yeah. So we're in by far the most choose your fighter version of the markets that we've ever seen, where it isn't necessarily, it's a good thing, right? Because something that's just like a vague hypium is not getting as much traction as like founder-led projects where the founders are very visible. And the great example of that is like a buddy of mine named Wab at Sappy Seals, who's got a gaming sector he's got a gaming arm to his project, Pixel Labs. You see the DigOdds ecosystem, you see Luca Nets and Pudgy Penguins, and those are like the most dominant NFT projects. And so it's kind of nice to see a market that's reflecting the values of the founder and the visibility of the founder. And we're ending up with pretty much a founder-driven market, which is really maybe not like the vision for Satoshi's vision here of like what decentralization is all about, but it is just the reality of these current markets and projects, which is that if you think a founder is good at communicating the vision and you believe in the vision, there's a place where passive investments are starting to paper. But obviously, the strong founders don't really want to encourage passiveness because that's the holder base being passionate about the project is kind of what makes the project grow. Because one channel, one person, one founder can only be so loud, right? and can only saturate their audience with so much. Like, obviously, my channel, I've risen to prominence through being sort of a general commentator on markets and crypto and gaming. And so if my content becomes 100% about my projects, then I don't have as big of a platform. I'll probably lose some platform to focus only on my project. So having the ability to inspire the community is really important. And I guess if you want to be a passive person, you want to be passive in a group of very active holders, is what I'll say. And so that's the way this market's working. I'm going to start doing a lot more content about it, but it's really choose your fighter. Pick people that you believe are going to amplify the message, that the message is one that makes sense to you, such that you could articulate it very easily. And if you have those things in place, you see the vision, you see, like, understanding that a lot of this stuff won't work out. That's just the nature of business, right? A lot of the stuff won't work out. However, if you are going to align around certain characteristics, it's highly founder driven right now. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think what I'll add is that, Elliot mentioned before that Gabe, in this Web2 space, they see some absorbed number of games pop up, and it's only 10 that survive. It's the same, I think, in this space as well, because I can't tell you how many games I've looked at on an investment standpoint. And I think that the biggest thing, yes, it's the founders, but early on in this sector, it was investing in dreams and futures. I think that we're now seeing finally investing in an actual product or somewhat of development of games. And I think that's a huge change in the way that people are looking at investing. And then the last thing is to add is, like, again, it comes back down to what type of investor are you. And if sometimes we get the crypto idea of, I need a 10x or 100x because I'm in the space. It's looking for not only the right founders, but it's looking for something that you passionately understand, that will be a kind of a blue chip of games or GameFi play.
Right on. Well, we are heading towards wrapping. If anybody else wants to jump up and ask or say anything. I was curious here, just seeing this post that Becker made today. He's bringing up Metaverse AR again. Just about a year ago, maybe 15 months ago, I think a lot of us thought by this time there would be a large percentage of society making their living in the metaverse, and all these metaverses that were being built would be populated and being used, and all kinds of currencies would be moving around in them. Don't think we've seen that quite yet. Becker's saying on this thing that it's going to pump hard and come back for real. Anybody up here have any opinions on that? I think that's going to be a big part of this crypto gaming adoption, AR, metaverse.
Certainly. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the leading momentum drivers in the news, right? And I think that also it's going to be a huge adoption. I do think that eventually VR, AR, metaverse technology will get better. The user experience will get a lot better, right? There's a lot of reports of people that have the issues with nausea and, that they get dizzy after playing certain VR games. Some of them aren't the most polished yet, and we're going to get to that point. And I think with, despite the slack that Meta gets, I think that Meta is going to probably end up putting out at least a product that works and a product that people will use, right? And I think that there's going to be brilliant minds that do push this industry forward. Some of the biggest analysts, project 9 to 13 trillion as far as the value of the metaverse by the year 2032. So I'm really thinking that metaverse is kind of run alongside crypto gaming, and it's going to kind of be one of the lead drivers that helps gaming capture the mainstream audience, in my opinion. As metaverse gains traction, people are going to more open up to that realm and kind of dive into things, and they're going to start opening up to the technology that can come into games as well.
What do you think about that, Elio? Are we going to be riding our real VR cyber bikes next year in the next code breaker type experience?
Time, right? And it's more of a focus on goals. And I've said it very clearly over and over again. The game is the first step. Focusing on the fun games with meaningful NFT integrations is the first step. Most likely those games, the first ones, won't be as generous with tokenomics. That's okay. In the end, just being present and grinding your way through it, you're going to make mistakes. Some of those will be things that Neo Tokyo has early access to that even helped contribute to, in building. Some of those things won't. And it's just going to be one of those ways where over time, staying committed to the vision, understanding that if we all agree where the world's going to be in 10 years and we really care about seeing it through to that future, then it's just one of those things about outweighting and outworking. I know over the last 5 years, I've waited and outworked. I've waited more and worked more than I think most people as far as like the commitment to this particular goal, and it has elevated me tremendously. People are like, "Oh gosh, I wish I'd gotten early like Elio." Well, guess what? Crypto's dead again. So you're early again, and it's not about what time you get in. It's about when you get in as far as how easy things are. If you get in the easy times, guess what? A lot of people getting in the easy times, not special. If you're getting in the hard times, nobody's coming in the hard times. That makes you different. That makes you special. So there's no guarantees in life. There's no guarantees that everything goes back to, the most uproarious wet and wild bull run. And quite frankly, it going right back to that is probably a bad thing, because in that climate, what did we see? We saw money flow into every stupid thing possible because number go up. And as soon as the music stopped, everyone got crushed, right? Whereas if we see a more slow and steady growth that's based on meaningful, actual product-based evolution over the next several years, that's a way that all of us can win slowly together, because we'll be able to but we'll be able to, with quality and with data and with fundamentals, evaluate real value and real growth. And that's a very special thing. And you see those conversations happening within Neo Tokyo a lot. And that's where a group like Neo Tokyo is going to be critical for navigating this. It's why I wanted Neo Tokyo to exist, because this industry is far too big and far too fast-paced for one person or one team to evaluate all of it. You need a hive mind. You need a bigger group. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see the evolution of this entire industry. But it's not about one thing. It's not about cyber bikes tomorrow. It's about tracking and understanding and paying attention and just not losing interest, because going away losing interest is the way that you surefire don't get to participate. Paying attention, you actually give yourself a shot. So that's my take. And again, thank you all for having me up here. I'm looking forward to more Neo Tokyo spaces.
Right on, Firestorm. You want to bring us home?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Elliot, for hopping in. And Johnny and Jorge, appreciate it. Johnny, have anything you want to shout out real quick before we hop off?
No. Check out my show on Crypto Banter. If you haven't, in the game, check us out over at this thing of ours, doing a lot of cool things with gaming, access to a lot of ecosystems, esports, and more. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoy these spaces. And Elio, Jorge, pleasure as always. Guys, thanks for hosting.
Yep, appreciate you. Jorge, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, talking about trends, we're giving away $500,000 in US dollars. That's USD, USDC. So, we're at NFA definitely trying to change that language and make it easier for gamers to understand and, have fun. Just that's the biggest thing. We want to have fun. So appreciate you all for having me. And as always, thank you guys. And awesome to be able to spend some time with you guys.
Awesome. And you guys can check out Elliot's other two projects, Imposters or Gigamart. Gigamart launched last month. Zehi is over here on the news account. Thanks, Zehi, for hopping in. You can check out the almost daily Neo Tokyo news up on our website. And I'm Firestorm at Rolfing ETH. If you want to check out my actual profile, we do these weekly up on Spotify and YouTube afterwards for the recordings, in case you missed some of it. But thanks, everybody, for joining. We are out.
Aloha.